Welcome to today's episode of Your Best Work podcast. This is your host, Eric Hoke, and I'm so glad to be with you today. It is a massive milestone. Well, not that massive, but it is a big one for me. Today is my 10th episode. So, if you've been tracking with me for the last 2.5 months, you understand that one of my goals with this podcast was to make it to 10 episodes because I read and I understand that most people who strike out to launch a podcast never make it to this point. They fizzle out. It's called pod fade. It's a real thing. So I have really enjoyed spending these last 10 episodes with you. I'm going to continue doing this, as you might have picked up by now. For those who have been listening for a while, some of them will be interviews, some of them will be AMA style. This is part of my Substack, erichoke.substack.com. You can go there, become a subscriber. I have a written newsletter that comes out every single Monday and a podcast that releases every Thursday, understanding and exploring all things around calling, vocation, and identity. And I was with Anthony Karai in the last episode, and one of the things that he recommended that I do is to upload the podcast recording via YouTube. So I'm going to start doing that in addition to uploading it to Spotify and Apple and all those other places. So once again, erichoke.substack.com. And you can also watch this live on YouTube. Well, I guess not live on YouTube because you can watch it after I record it because I can't do it in one take. So I'm not that good. But today is going to be an AMA version of the show. I have two really interesting questions today regarding job seeking. The first one is how to network and not be weird. The second one is why am I not getting past first round interviews? So these are questions that people like you have submitted. They DM'd me on Twitter or X or on Substack. They sent me an email, eric@ihelppastorsgetjobs.com, and they just asked a question regarding career calling and identity. And I do my best to kind of fill those questions. I look at it as async coaching. Maybe we don't have the ability to spend an hour together, but I can spend a few minutes helping you untangle your pressing challenges when it comes to career transitions, calling, identity, all that good stuff. So I'm going to do my best to just do this all in one big shot. So I appreciate you as always for listening, and let's go ahead and jump in. Let me read the question here. Where is it? Bum, bum, bum. There, we got it. Hi, Eric. I know that part of job seeking is growing your professional network. I am naturally introverted and socially awkward, and the thought of networking kind of scares me. Any tips? Okay. I really appreciate the person who sent this question. As somebody who's also introverted, and as you can tell, but if you're watching the video, a little bit socially awkward, I understand that networking and putting yourself out there professionally, it can be a little bit strange. It can be a little bit daunting, a little bit overwhelming. You don't want to come across as skeevy or gross or salesy, whatever. So how do you network with strangers and not come across as a creep? Really good question. And if you follow my work for any amount of time, including my book, Market Street Pastor, I write extensively about how networking is your key to your next opportunity professionally. So the first thing I would say is that you want to look at networking as an opportunity to give value before you take value. I know that sounds very corporate and very cliche and like, well, what does that even mean, Eric? Can you explain it to me like I'm five? I'll explain it in a story. So I have this acquaintance, kind of like a friend of a friend. I've met him two or three times in person in my life. Somehow, some way, we got each other's cell phone numbers, and I don't ever hear from this particular person until he needs a job. So a year might go by, 18 months might go by. He doesn't ask me how I'm doing. I'll ask him how he's doing. He's an acquaintance. He's not really a friend. But randomly, he'll just text me, and his text will say, "Hey, Eric, I'm looking for work. Know anything?" And I'm like, I'm gonna be honest with you guys. I just mostly ignore his messages at this point because, for one, I don't really know you, dude. I don't know what kind of skills you have. I don't know what sort of jobs you're looking for. I don't even know where you live. I barely even know your name. So hitting me up randomly out of the blue saying I'm looking for work, you know anything? Not a very way to net, not a very effective way to network, not a very effective way to find a job and to leverage the people you know professionally. So don't do that. Don't just hit up complete strangers or relative strangers, acquaintances, and just ask them for a job or if they know of a job. Because what you're doing in that point, number one, you're really damaging your reputation and your professional brand because people are gonna see that. Like I see this text message, like, dude, what? Like I haven't talked to you in forever. Don't even say hello, how are you? Or hey, I have a request. Just you know of any job? I understand it can be stressful and overwhelming when you're looking for a new role, but that's not the most strategic way of doing that. So that's the first thing. Don't just put out random text messages to people asking them if they know of any opportunities. But not only that, like at that point, if you make that ask of me, like I'm now like you're putting me in a position where you want me to work for you. Like you want me to go out and look for a job for you? Like I'm not your recruiter. I'm not your career coach. You're not paying me to work for you. What are you talking about? So don't do that. That is a cautionary tale of what not to do. But what you can do, how you can provide value first is you can do what the producer of this podcast actually does, Jeff Riggs. So what Jeff had done for me, didn't know who he was, never met him, never talked to him before. Just he followed my work, he followed my Substack. I released my first podcast, and if you listen to the first one, God bless your soul, it was not very well produced because I produced it personally. Not my skill set, have no experience doing that, not what I'm good at, not my strong suit, fill in the blank. And Jeff sent me this really thoughtful message. He's like, "Hey, Eric, you don't know me. I'm also a bivocational pastor in Virginia Beach. On the side, I do audio editing, including podcasts. Have you considered hiring a professional producer to help you with your podcast?" And I had not thought of that because this podcast makes no money. Why would I spend money on something that makes no money? But the thing that really sold me for his value proposition to me was he said to me, I'll edit a podcast for you for free and no strings attached. Just send me the raw audio. I'll send you back the edited file. And that's my gift to you. If you want to utilize it, fantastic. If you want to work with me, even better. But I'm willing to do that for you for free. And I don't know how long it takes him to do a podcast edit, but I definitely was really impressed at his willingness to provide value to me first, before asking for anything. What he ultimately wanted was for me to hire him and for him to do the podcast editing, which he does. And I now send him a check every single month. He's become a great professional contact and a colleague. He's really good at what he does. And he did that by offering value first. So as you're networking, trying to, get side work, if you're in the gig economy, trying to get a job, if you want a W-2 job, think through how can I add value first. For example, if you're in a job search right now and you want to meet somebody for like a virtual coffee, like, hey, you don't know me, I don't know you. If I send you a $5 Starbucks gift card, would you spend 15 minutes with me if you're not living in the same city? Or if you are living in the same city, like, can we go out for a coffee for 20 minutes and I'll buy you your coffee and just pick your brain? You're providing value before you're asking for anything. The second thing here is you want to find common ground with people you're networking with. Kind of the best way to do that is a 7 degrees of separation. So granted, you can kind of shoot your shot and say, "Oh, you're a fan of the Knicks. I'm a fan of the Knicks. See what I did there? Shoot your shot, Knicks." No, never mind. You can try to find that common ground. You went to Duke. I went to Duke. You went to, you know, wherever I went to wherever, and try to do that. That's one way to find common ground, but I think it's better to get a soft introduction to somebody. So, for example, on LinkedIn, if I see that the hiring manager for this role is Sally, and I don't know Sally, but Sally's connected to this guy named, Terrence, and Terrence knows Jack, and I know Jack. So I would ask Jack to introduce me to Terrence, introduce me to Sally. That's 3 degrees of separation. So figuring out how can you get a soft introduction as opposed to a cold, "Hey Sally, you don't know me, but I'm interested in the job of your company." It's like, wait, what? What's going on there? But if Jack introduces me to Terrence and then Terrence says, "Hey, this is, Eric, good guy. I got to know him." You meet Sally, a lot more likely to take your call, a lot more likely to hear you out. The last thing is you want to get really crystal clear on what it is you want. So going back to the earlier story, and I hate to keep picking on this guy, but I guess he kind of deserves it. Reaching out to someone saying, "Hey, I'm looking for a job. You know of anything?" What? Like, I don't even know where to start with that. Like, what exactly are you looking for? What line of work? What city? What type of industry? What skills do you possess? What is it you're looking for so I can, provide feedback? I'm just looking for a job. Well, geez, go put your application at McDonald's. I don't know what to tell you. So having a really clear picture of, hey, I have these skill sets, I live in this community, this is the sort of job I want, the sort of organization or company I want to work for. Getting crystal clear on that, even before you start networking, is really critical. So, to the person who wrote this, I really appreciate it. Networking can be awkward, especially if you're socially awkward, like I am, and it sounds like you are. You're introverted, I'm introverted, it sounds like you are. Add value first. Hey, listen, buy a cup of coffee. Hey, listen, I'll do an episode for free. Hey, listen, how can I serve you? With the expectation that we would create a mutually beneficial relationship with one another. Start there. Second thing is find warm leads, find common ground, figure out who knows somebody who knows somebody who knows the person you want to talk to. Do that legwork on the front end and have that soft introduction. And the third and final thing that I would say is get really clear. Hey, listen, this is what type of job I want. I have a background in project management in software. I have 3 Scrum certifications. I'm looking for a Scrum Master role in an IT team for a 200-person size company or less. I have this number of years experience in software development life cycles, or whatever. Whatever your skill set is, really being able to articulate it well is really important because when you network, you don't want to not know what you're talking about. You're networking for a reason. You're networking for a job, for an opportunity. So knowing what that is helps people help you. Don't put them on the defending end of like, oh man, I don't know what kind of job I want, but I'll take anything. That's not a good position to be in. So get clear on that. So that's the question. That's my answer. Thanks so much for it. Take a sip of my little Coke Zero here. All right. Next question. Um, let's see here. Oh, here we goes. I can't get the past the first round interview. Okay. Not even hi, Eric. All right. I won't take it personal. I can't get past the first round interview. Over the last few months, I have had 5 first round interviews, but can't seem to get invited to future rounds. Well, say hello, Eric. Maybe that will help. No, I'm just kidding. I'm sorry. Thank you for the question. What advice do you have to make a memorable first impression in a first round interview? All right. Well, that's very frustrating. And to go to 5 first round interviews and never get a call back. I say this with love to the person that wrote this. It definitely is a you problem. It's not them, it's you. Something's not clicking. And hopefully the next 5 minutes or so I can help you get, shored up and get invited to second, third, fourth rounds and ultimately offers for a really great job. To understand kind of how initial phone screens work, you apply for a job, they invite you for an initial interview. Typically it's with a recruiter, depends on the size of the company, but typically a recruiter, HR person. And that's like the pre screen process. All they're trying to do in that first round is figure out, is this person even qualified to move down our pipeline to bring in for a role? They're not going to waste time with hiring managers or team interviews or panels or projects if they realize within the first 20 minutes talking to the recruiter, yeah, this person does not really have what it takes to do the job. So it sounds like this person who wrote this, maybe this you at home listening, you get snagged up on that first interview, which I mean, I hate to break it, but that's kind of the easiest interview. So you really want to make sure you nail that first interview, kind of get past that recruiter, past that initial phone screen. And here's some of my favorite kind of interview tips to get through that. The very first thing is do your research. In 2025, there really is no excuse at all for you to not have a very clear, robust picture on what this company is, how they operate, how they make money, just who they are. Understand who their clients are, understand what products and services they offer, understand where they're based, understand their headcount, know who the CEO is, know if they're a publicly traded company, kind of listen to an earnings call if you need to, peruse their social media. Like you need to speak and talk and understand the company before you even walk into that first interview. I know it's an interview, but you got to do some homework. You got to do some prep work because the person that's going to go before or after you will. And they're going to win that job over you because you didn't do your due diligence to understand the company and its needs. So please spend 30 minutes to an hour and a half, however long it takes, understand who the company is and what they do. I'll tell you a story. This is a good one. So I was on an interview panel. We had a woman that was coming in for an interview, final round interview. So she had jumped through all the hurdles. It was the third round. And I asked her, hey, like, what interests you in this role? Okay, pretty standard interview question. That's not a curveball. That's an easy one. What interests you in this role? This is hilarious. So she she was telling me and myself, my manager, and one other person that was on the call. She's like, "Oh, I was working on this government contract, and we had this big project we were doing, and we did such a good job on that project that I worked myself out of a job. The contract ended, and now I'm looking for my next challenge." And I'm like, why do I care? Why do I care that you worked yourself out of a job? I asked you a really clear question. What interests you in this role, this company that you put your name in and already had 2 rounds of interviews, and now you're on the final round. You're really close to getting this job. What interests you in this role? And she talked about her previous job, not what I'm really interested in. So understanding why you're interested in that company, what is it they do, and that kind of brings me to the next one, which is understand how this particular need helps the company achieve its goal. Okay, this is where it gets a little bit more tricky, a little more finesse is required here. But when you're in an interview, they're looking at you saying, "Hey, we have these challenges, we have these problems. Can you come in and solve these problems?" So the more familiar and the more comfortable that you can get with the, "Hey, I understand," let's just say, for example, you are a company, you'll say you're a bank, right? You are a bank and you have all these new tellers who come in and they're fresh out of high school or career changers and they're kind of entry level employees and they are not very good at customer service. And we need someone to come in and train them on customer service soft skills, how to interact with our clients, how to, treat them well. We need to hire a trainer. Okay. It's like you need to go in and like understand like my goal is to sell them on how I can train their tellers on the skills required to do their job well. That is the problem you're solving. They're not hiring you for a job, they're hiring you to solve a problem. So getting crystal clear on how you can solve that problem will convince the recruiter, then the hiring manager ultimately, yes, we need this person because they're going to come in and they're going to solve this pain point for us. So if you can't clearly articulate how does my skill set solve your problem? You're gonna have a really hard time moving forward in the interview process. So that's the second one. Like I said, a little bit more nuance there. You might not have all the information, but that's something to think through critically. If you can't answer that question before the interview, you're gonna have a hard time, selling them on why you're a good fit. The other thing too that I think is really critical, this is like a no-brainer, but the first question they're very likely to ask you, well, the second question, I'll get to the first question here in a second, little teaser alert. The second question they're going to ask you is, tell me about yourself. Tell me about yourself. You might call this the elevator pitch. You might call this, your 60-second, bio. Listen, have that locked down. Okay. Have that really succinct, really clear. Here is in 90 seconds who I am. Don't talk about your family, your kids, your age. Just leave that at the door. Okay. It's three-step process, very simple. Kind of here's what I've done professionally. Right. Here's my professional background. Here's what I've done. Here's and make sure it relates to the job. Here's kind of the skills and the competencies that I've acquired, throughout my time of doing what I've done, in my career history. And like, here's how it can solve your challenge. Going back to that previous point, here's how it can, fit nicely into the problem that you posted in this job description. All right. Really simple. Don't overthink it. They don't want to hear about your dog. They want you to hear about your 5 kids. They want to know how can you solve our problem. So here's what I've done, skills I've gained, and here's how I think it fits nicely into this role. Looking for my next challenge, my next opportunity. And I believe the skills that I possess prepared me well for this position. So, first question they'll ask you is, how are you? All right. How are you? Don't miss this opportunity. Remember anything from this podcast. Remember this. How are you? Don't just say good. Don't just say fine. Say, hey, Eric, how are you? Oh, I'm doing really well. It's going to be a 3-day weekend. I'm looking forward to having a barbecue. Gonna be a lot of fun. How are you doing today? Oh yeah, it is a 3-day weekend. I'm looking forward to that too. What are you gonna be making on the barbecue? Right away, you built rapport within the first 5 seconds of the call. But if you just say good, fine, okay, whatever, you can say anything. I'm doing all right. It's kind of a rainy day today, but I think the sun's gonna come out later. I'm gonna, go for a walk. Whatever, something. Just give them a little something to pull on. If you're a recruiter, if you're doing pre-screen phone interviews all day, every day, if The person that does this, the person that takes that extra step to build up a sense of personal connection is going to stand out substantially. You might do 10 phone calls in a day. Who are you going to remember? You're going to remember the guy that says it's a 3-day weekend. I'm looking forward to grilling some burgers or whatever. So find that, moment to build some trust and turn it immediately into a conversation, not an interview. On the tail end, when you ask questions to the recruiter during the initial phone screen, typically what they'll do at the end is they'll say, "Do you have any questions for me?" Always have questions. Okay, don't ask 100, ask like two or three. But the last question you should ask is this, and I think this is really positive. I shared a lot today, in this initial phone call. I appreciate you making the time. Is there anything you'd like me to expand on? That's so good. That's so good because what that does is that gives the recruiter or the hiring manager, whoever you're talking to, the opportunity to think through, what, you actually made a comment earlier. I want to kind of double click on this. It doesn't end it on a negative note. It shows you're open to feedback. It shows that we're willing to think on your feet. Really good way to end a call. Don't end a call by saying, "Is there anything about my application that concerns you?" Don't do that. Please do not do that. Ask, "Is there anything you'd like me to expand on?" When I was interviewing for a job in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, I grew up in Pennsylvania, spent my whole adult life in New York City. So I asked that question while I was in the interview process. Is there anything you'd like me to expand on? And one of the people made a comment on the panel. They said, "Well, Eric, I am kind of curious, given that you grew up in Pennsylvania, but you lived in New York City for the last number of years, where do your sports allegiances lie?" And everybody at the table kind of chuckled. I said, "Well, I like the Steelers for football, and I like the Yankees for baseball." And I got some, groans, of course, because it's kind of Phillies country and here in Lancaster. But that was an opportunity for me to just be a real person, kind of show some of my personality, build some rapport, make the group laugh, and I ultimately got the job. Not as a result of that, not as a result of having a very conflicting sports team allegiance, but as a result of my skills and experience, but also that light joke that I can make at the end. So that's what I would say there. Finally, a thoughtful follow-up thank you note. A lot of people don't do this. I don't know why. Quick email, 2 or 3 lines. Really enjoyed talking with you. Thanks for making the time. I'm looking forward to the next steps. If you're able to, a handwritten note can really go a long way as well. If you have the ability to do that, if you know the person's address, like a physical office that you had the interview at, do that. So in conclusion, do your research. No excuse. The internet's a wild and wonderful place. Know what you're walking into. Focus on how your role and your talent will solve a business problem. They're hiring you not to fill a job, but to solve a problem. Number three, have a robust 60 to 90-second elevator pitch. Number four, end on a high note. Is there anything you'd like me to expand on? And instead of saying good or fine, have a quick little quip about what you're doing this weekend, something personal that you can share on. And then finally, a thoughtful thank you note really goes a long way. I think you put these things into practice, the person who wrote this, I think you're going to get callbacks for second and third interviews. I wish you the best. I know it's not easy, but thank you so much for the question. So, okay, I think I did it. I did it all in one shot. Your Best Work podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Once again, my name is Eric Hoke. You can subscribe to me on Substack, erichoke.substack.com. It's always a pleasure to be with you. And if you enjoy this episode, share it with a friend. Give me 5 stars on Apple or Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. And as always, thank you so much and have a great day.